YouTube, it's Michael Gallagher here, back with another album review. Earlier on in the day I reviewed a classic album of mine that I love called The Stranger by Billy Joel, and now I thought it's time to move on to a more contemporary album by a similar artist, Elton John. And this year he released a new studio album called Wonderful Crazy Night, which I have here on CD. And I was really excited to get this album because Elton has been producing some really, really good, if not slightly underrated work in the last few years. I might go into the other albums that he's done and review them, because there are very few reviews for these albums on YouTube, but particularly The Diving Board. First listen to it and you think, it's a bit slow, not sure about this. But when you listen to it with headphones 2, 3, 4 times, it's an album you will come to love. I almost guarantee it, because the songwriting in it is fantastic. And then, of course, there was the song, the album before that, with Leon Russell, called The Union, which again was an album when I first heard it, I didn't think a great deal of it, but on repeated plays, it is a masterpiece, and there are some really good songs. The only problem with these newer Elton John albums, he's producing great work and great songs, but some of the albums are perhaps just a little too long. You know, back in the day, Elton would create an album that would go onto an LP format, perhaps not Yellow Brick Road, which I've got a copy of there on the wall, which is obviously a double album, but a lot of the albums were single albums and they were quite short. They were under 40 minutes, and now because of CDs, albums tend to be quite a bit longer. And it's one of the reasons that I've got this on CD as opposed to vinyl, is because the record is a double record, but it retails at some ridiculous price. It retails at about £20 in HMV, and online it's expensive as well. And to me, that's just too much money when you can pick the CD of the album up for a lot less. That said, there are some problems with this CD, and I wish I could have picked up the vinyl version, but A, it's harder to store, and B, it has inherent problems in the medium also. There's no real problem with CDs as a medium, in my view. I think they sound really, really good. I think they've always sounded good, and I think that the technology has come along where some of that brittleness that you get on the early CDs actually is barely even relevant anymore. You can't really hear it. But on this CD, it is mastered to be loud, and it's not music that should be mastered in that way. I don't think it should be mastered in that way. It's gone a bit too far, and it takes out, because it's loud, some of the dynamic range. So when it should be quiet, it's still loud. When it's loud, it's loud. It's always going to be loud, but then it doesn't. It's fatiguing because it's just constantly loud. And that means it's badly limited by the mastering house who produced the CD, not necessarily the mastering engineer, because I have a suspicion that if I had a copy of the vinyl, it would probably sound a lot better. And I think that for that reason, actually, some of the songs on this album, they suffer. They suffer because they don't have that dynamic intensity. And again, it was an album that when I put it on, I was really disappointed with it. I mean, the track that was released as a single to start with on this album was a track called Looking Up, which is almost like a dentist drill. Bang 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 bang. I heard that melody and I thought, what on earth is Elton doing in 2016? And I suspect that he may be trying to sort of please the masses. He may be trying to make an album that he thinks is going to be successful and played a lot on the radio in 2016. And I don't know why he's doing that, because he hasn't necessarily been doing that with his last few albums. As I say, The Diving Board was fantastic, and I loved The Union with Leon Russell. I thought that the collaboration there was absolutely fantastic, and it was great to hear Leon Russell again, but it was also great to be able to find Leon Russell's old albums on vinyl for very little money at various record fairs and have them on record and think, my God, these were masterpieces of their day. They're albums that I might actually review in due course on the channel. But this album hasn't got many reviews on YouTube, and nor has The Union or The Diving Board, so I thought I'd just give a quick overview of it. And as I say, when I first listened to it, I didn't think a lot of it. I think Wonderful Crazy Night was what I would call, what my dad would call, a Sunday afternoon song. Elton sitting at the piano on a Sunday afternoon, bit bored, bash something out, oh, that'll do. And it's okay. I've heard it more now, and I actually hear some of the nuances in it, and you hear extra things when you go back to songs, and it's actually become one of my favourite tracks. And a lot of the song is like that. Blue Wonderful is a track on the album that I heard it on the radio the first time I heard it, and I thought, what is this? It sounds like it sounds almost like one of Elton's stage production type songs where the lyrics don't really fit with the melody particularly well. I've heard it now and I like it more than I did. I'm still not a huge fan of that particular track. But there are some really actually good tracks on this album. You just have to persevere with it slightly because they are massed in these tracks that are almost a bit throwaway and almost sound, as I say, like they're trying to please people. But there are two tracks that I absolutely love. And I noticed that Elton's been playing these tracks. I saw Elton in concert in September in Hyde Park in London. And the concert was televised because it was a Radio 2 thing, and he played two tracks from the album. One was Looking Up, and when I heard it live, I kind of got it a lot more because the guitar was a lot beefier. It just had a lot. It was fun, and it sounded good, and it went down well with the crowd for a new song. And I have actually, since hearing it live, sometimes when you hear a song live and then you go back to the album version, you get the song a lot more. I don't know if you agree with that. That's something I always think. I think, God, I get this song more now. I understand why it's good. I understand why people got excited about it. But it didn't necessarily translate to the original recording the first time I heard it. Looking Up is a song that I would suggest actually is pretty good when you go back to it, or if you've heard the live version a few times. And it does get in your brain, even though it's a bit of a drill, a dentist drill. It actually does start to... You remember it. So it can't be that bad. And then but there are two songs here. One's called I've Got Two Wings, which is about an old preacher in America who apparently used to go around the South with a Gibson guitar and an old amplifier, and he would preach the word of God to anyone that would listen. And he died, and the song's all about him and his good work that he did. And I think that song is absolutely brilliant, and I wish Elton would play that perhaps live more. The other track is called A Good Heart, which Elton's been playing live. He played it at Hyde Park when we saw him, and he also played it on Jules Holland this year when he visited just solo piano. And when I first heard it, I thought, it's a bit average. But then I listened to it again and again, and I realised it's actually a fantastic song. And the album is worth getting for those two tracks alone. And Looking Up is good, and Wonderful Crazy Night's good. And then there are other tracks in here that are fun as well. And the bonus tracks, the tracks that you don't get if you get the record, are both really good tracks. One's called Free and Easy, and one's called England and America, and they are both sort of fun Elton-esque tracks. As I say, when I first heard the album, I didn't think much of it. I didn't like the artwork to it at all. I thought it was terrible artwork, because Elton's had some fantastic artwork on some of his albums. Look at Tumbleweed Connection, look at Yellow Brick Road, the first Elton John album, of course, Madman Across the Water. Brilliant artwork on all those albums. And even, on the diving board, I mean, what a beautiful photograph. The album artwork is fantastic. And I was a bit disappointed in this. It's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to convey that message of fun maybe, but I wasn't keen. But I've listened to the album a lot more now, and when I first heard it, I didn't like it at all. I didn't rate it. I actually put it back in the collection and thought, you know what, this is going down with the Leather Jackets of Elton John albums. And anybody that's ever heard Leather Jackets or Victim of Love will know what I'm talking about. It's sort of consigned to that kind of very, we don't speak about it. It didn't happen. But that's not fair at all, because this is actually a good album, and if you listen to it properly, you listen to it with headphones and you sit and you listen to the lyrics and the chord changes. Some of them are a little bit obvious. Elton's used them lots and lots of times before, but a lot of them aren't, and a lot of the jazzier type riffs are absolutely fantastic. On the whole, I think if you like Elton John, go and get the album and persevere with it for a couple of weeks. Listen to it the first time, put it back on the shelf, then get it out again. Listen to it again. Listen to it 3 or 4 times. If you don't like it after the 3rd or 4th listen, you're probably never going to like it. But I actually became to really, really like this album. And it's an album that I went to when we went on holiday. I had it on my iPod and I was listening to it there. I listened to it in the car for about 3 weeks, almost on repeat on my iPod in the car. And I've listened to it in the listening room a good few times in this CD also. The only problem with the CD, as I say, is the fact that it's so heavily limited. But you know what? That's how music's produced nowadays. I don't like it necessarily. I think that albums should be produced at a slightly lower level, because then it lets them breathe more. Let me know what you think about that actually in the comments. Anybody that's heard the album, let me know what you think of it. I want to hear what other people think, because I haven't seen a lot of discussion on YouTube about this album, and it might be that nobody likes it, or it might be that people just aren't commenting on it for whatever reason. But please give me a heads up on this and let me know what you think. It's Elton John, Wonderful Crazy Night. It's really, really well priced. I think it's under £10 now, the CD. You can buy it from HMV, all the supermarkets. It's well worth putting into your collection if you're an Elton John fan. If you're not an Elton John fan, you probably won't be picking it up anyway.